Welcome back. My name is Dr. Wilson Everett, and before you scroll past this or put it on in the background while you do something else, I want to ask you to give me your full attention for just a few minutes. Because what I'm about to walk you through is something I genuinely believe can shift the way you think about food, about your body, and about what it means to age well. And I am not talking about trendy advice or the latest superfood craze. I'm talking about real, grounded, science-backed information that most people in their 60s and beyond have never been told clearly or completely. Here is the thing that tends to surprise people when I bring it up. Most of the nutritional guidance we grew up with was designed for younger bodies. When your mother or your doctor told you to eat your vegetables, that was solid advice, and it still is in many ways. But that broad, general instruction misses something critically important. Your body at 60, 65, 70, or beyond is not the same body it was at 30. It processes food differently. It responds to certain compounds differently. And what nourishes a younger person with a robust digestive system, efficient kidneys, and a thyroid firing on all cylinders may not serve you in the same way anymore. In some cases, it may actually be working against you. Now, I want to be careful here because I am not about to tell you that vegetables are dangerous or that you should be afraid of eating plants. Quite the opposite. I'm going to help you understand the nuance, and nuance is where real health lives. After 60, your body undergoes a series of shifts that are subtle but deeply significant. One of the most important of these is the rise of what researchers now call chronic low-grade inflammation. This is entirely different from the kind of inflammation you notice when you stub your toe or roll an ankle. That short-term swelling is your immune system doing exactly what it should. What I am describing is something quieter and far more persistent. It simmers beneath the surface around the clock, slowly wearing down your arterial walls, your brain tissue, your cartilage, your joints. Scientists have begun calling this process inflammaging, and it sits at the root of nearly every major chronic disease that affects older adults, from cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes to cognitive decline and certain forms of cancer. At the same time, your digestive system becomes significantly more sensitive with each passing decade. The lining of your gut becomes thinner. The diversity and population of beneficial bacteria in your microbiome starts to shrink. Your body produces fewer of the enzymes needed to break down and absorb nutrients efficiently. What this means in practical terms is that certain foods your gut handled without complaint 20 years ago may now cause real discomfort or worse, maybe quietly preventing you from absorbing the nutrients you actually need. Your kidneys deserve their own mention here. After 60, kidney filtration naturally slows. This becomes relevant when we talk about certain vegetables that contain compounds like oxalates or high concentrations of potassium. A younger set of kidneys handles these without effort. An older set may struggle, and that struggle can show up in ways that feel entirely unrelated to diet. Things like elevated mineral levels in the blood, changes in heart rhythm, or the formation of painful kidney stones. And then there is the medication issue, which affects a remarkable percentage of people in this age group. Many older adults are managing one or more chronic conditions with prescription drugs. Certain vegetables contain compounds that interact directly with how those medications are metabolized in your body. This is not a minor inconvenience. This can meaningfully alter how much of a drug is active in your system at any given time, which can reduce effectiveness or increase the risk of side effects. Understanding all of this is what makes the difference between eating vegetables and eating the right vegetables in the right way for exactly where your body is right now. So let us go through the ones that deserve caution first, and then we will get to the ones that are genuinely working in your favor at this stage of life. The first vegetable worth approaching carefully is raw spinach. And before you object, let me be clear that I am not telling you to eliminate spinach from your life. Spinach is genuinely rich in nutrients, including iron, folate, vitamin K, and a wide array of protective antioxidants. The issue is not spinach itself. The issue is the raw form, especially in large quantities. Raw spinach is one of the most concentrated dietary sources of oxalates, which are naturally occurring compounds found in many plants. In a younger body with fully functioning kidneys, oxalates are processed and excreted without much trouble. But as kidney function declines with age, your ability to clear oxalates efficiently diminishes. And here's where the trouble begins. Oxalates bind to calcium in your digestive tract and kidneys, forming calcium oxalate crystals, which are the primary building blocks of kidney stones. Older adults are already at significantly higher risk for kidney stones than younger people, and a daily habit of eating large raw spinach smoothies or salads can quietly add fuel to that fire. Beyond kidney stones, oxalates can also accumulate in joint tissue, which is the last thing you need if you're already dealing with any degree of arthritis or joint inflammation. There is also emerging evidence suggesting that very high oxalate intake may interfere with the absorption of calcium and magnesium, two minerals that become increasingly essential for bone integrity as you age. The good news is straightforward. Cooking spinach, whether you steam it, sauté it, or add it to a warm dish, dramatically reduces its oxalate content. The heat draws those compounds out and reduces them considerably, and it also reduces the volume of the spinach you are eating in a single sitting. A quick sauté with olive oil and a bit of garlic takes only a few minutes and transforms spinach into something both delicious and far more appropriate for an older body. If you have a history of kidney stones or any existing kidney concerns, have a direct conversation with your doctor about how much oxalate is appropriate for your specific situation. The second category to approach with more awareness is raw cruciferous vegetables, particularly when eaten in large amounts. I'm talking about raw kale, raw Brussels sprouts, raw broccoli, and raw cauliflower. And again, I want to be absolutely precise here, because cruciferous vegetables as a food group are extraordinary. The research on their cancer-preventive properties is among the strongest in all of nutritional science. They are packed with fiber, with vitamins C and K, and with a group of compounds called glucosinolates that convert in your body into some of the most potent anti-cancer molecules we have identified in food. I'm not asking you to give these up. I'm asking you to be thoughtful about how you eat them. Here is the specific concern. Cruciferous vegetables contain compounds called goitrogens, which have the ability to interfere with your thyroid gland ability to absorb iodine, the essential mineral it needs to produce the hormones that regulate your entire metabolism. For a healthy person in their 30s, eating a modest amount of these vegetables occasionally, this is generally a non-issue. But thyroid function naturally declines as we age. An underactive thyroid, what medicine calls hypothyroidism, becomes increasingly common after 60, and the majority of people who have it are women. Many older adults are already on thyroid medication, and many more have borderline thyroid function that has simply not yet been diagnosed. When you're regularly consuming large quantities of raw kale in smoothies or eating big raw salads loaded with cruciferous greens on top of an already compromised thyroid, you may be silently deepening a problem that affects your energy, your weight, your mood, your cognitive sharpness, and your cardiovascular health. Your thyroid is essentially the master dial on your metabolic control panel, and when it is turned down too far, almost everything else suffers quietly alongside it. The second issue with raw cruciferous vegetables is their fiber structure. In their uncooked state, these vegetables contain a particularly tough variety of fiber that, while not harmful in small amounts, can be genuinely taxing on a digestive system that is naturally slowed down with age. The bloating, gas, and general digestive discomfort that many older adults experience after eating raw broccoli or cabbage are not just minor annoyances. They're your body's way of communicating that it is working very hard to process something it is struggling with. Chronic digestive stress drains your system and, over time, affects how well your gut absorbs the nutrients in everything else you eat. The fix, once again, is heat. Roasting, steaming, or lightly stir-frying cruciferous vegetables neutralizes a significant portion of those goitrogenic compounds and makes the fiber vastly more digestible. Roasted broccoli and caramelized Brussels sprouts are honestly among the most satisfying things you can eat, and your body will receive them with far greater ease and efficiency than it would their raw counterparts. Make cooking your cruciferous vegetables a non-negotiable habit, and feel free to enjoy them as often as you like. The third item on the caution list is one that tends to spark the most surprise in conversation, and it affects a specific but very substantial segment of older adults. The concern here is with nightshade vegetables as a category, which includes tomatoes, bell peppers, eggplant, and white potatoes. Tomatoes especially deserve individual mention because they carry powerful benefits in some respects. They are one of the richest dietary sources of lycopene, a fat-soluble antioxidant with meaningful evidence behind it for heart protection and a reduced risk of certain cancers. None of that is in dispute. The concern with nightshades lies in a group of naturally occurring compounds called alkaloids, the most prominent of which is solanine. These alkaloids are part of the plant's natural chemical defense system. In the vast majority of healthy people, they pass through the body without issue. But for older adults who are living with inflammatory joint conditions, whether that is osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, or any other form of chronic joint inflammation, there is a growing body of both clinical research and direct patient observation suggesting that nightshade alkaloids can irritate the gut lining, increase intestinal permeability, and trigger an immune response that manifests as worsened joint pain, greater stiffness, and increased swelling. This is not a universal reaction. Not everyone who eats tomatoes will experience joint flares, but the proportion of older adults who are sensitive to nightshades is significant enough that if you are managing any form of inflammatory joint disease and you have not yet explored this connection, it is genuinely worth a trial elimination period of 4 to 6 weeks to see whether removing nightshades changes how your joints feel. The response in those who are sensitive can be quite dramatic. Tomatoes carry an additional concern for older adults in the form of histamine. As certain digestive enzymes decline in production with age, the ability to break down histamine in the gut diminishes as well. Tomatoes are naturally high in histamine, and in someone with reduced enzyme activity, regular tomato consumption can produce symptoms like persistent headaches, skin flushing, nasal congestion, and low-level fatigue. These are symptoms that countless older adults simply attribute to the general experience of getting older when the real driver may be sitting right there on the dinner plate. And then there is the acid issue. The natural acidity of tomatoes is well documented, and acid reflux, as well as a condition called GERD, become considerably more common after 60 as the muscular valve at the base of the esophagus loses some of its tension over time. For anyone already dealing with chronic heartburn, raw tomatoes can significantly worsen the experience. Interestingly, cooking tomatoes actually increases the bioavailability of lycopene, which means you are extracting more of the beneficial antioxidant from slow-cooked tomato sauce or roasted tomato than you would from a raw one. So once again, the recommendation is not avoidance, but rather thoughtful preparation. Now we move into the territory that I find genuinely exciting, which is the group of vegetables that do not merely avoid causing problems, but actively address the biological realities of aging in targeted and remarkable ways. These are the foods that fight for you. The first is garlic. And while some people hesitate to consider garlic a vegetable in the classic sense, it is botanically a bulb vegetable and biologically one of the most powerful foods available to you. The active compound that gives garlic most of its medicinal firepower is called allicin, which is generated through an enzymatic reaction that occurs when garlic is crushed or chopped and allowed to sit for a few minutes before being cooked or consumed. The sulfur compounds in garlic, of which allicin is just the most prominent, have been the subject of hundreds of rigorous studies, and what those studies collectively show is nothing short of remarkable. Regular garlic consumption has been demonstrated in multiple large-scale clinical studies to produce measurable reductions in blood pressure in people with hypertension, which is one of the most pervasive and dangerous conditions in the over 60 population. The magnitude of those reductions in some studies has been comparable to the effect of a mild antihypertensive medication without the side effects. Garlic also reduces LDL cholesterol while preserving or improving the HDL fraction, and it reduces the tendency of blood platelets to aggregate into clots, which directly lowers the risk of the kind of events that cause heart attacks and strokes. Beyond cardiovascular protection, garlic serves as a prebiotic, meaning it feeds and nourishes the beneficial bacteria that populate your gut microbiome. Given that the gut microbiome naturally loses diversity and population density as we age, and given that a healthy microbiome is now understood to be connected to immune function, mood regulation, weight management, and chronic disease prevention, regularly feeding that internal ecosystem is one of the most intelligent things you can do for your overall health picture. Garlic also carries well-documented anti-cancer properties, with the strongest evidence pointing toward protection against stomach and colorectal cancers, both of which become more prevalent with age. And there is a growing and compelling body of research on garlic's neuroprotective properties, suggesting it may help protect brain cells from oxidative damage and reduce the risk of age-related cognitive decline. To get the most from garlic, crush or finely chop it and let it rest for about 10 minutes before using it. This waiting period allows the enzymatic process that creates allicin to complete fully. Adding it toward the end of cooking preserves more of the active compounds, and eating small amounts raw, if that suits your palate, provides even greater potency. 2 to 3 cloves per day, incorporated into soups, sauces, dressings, roasted vegetables, or grain dishes, is a meaningful therapeutic dose that works with your body's specific vulnerabilities at this stage of life. The second vegetable is one I consider essential for anyone over 60 who cares about maintaining their physical independence and avoiding one of the most devastating consequences of aging. I am talking about bok choy and the broader family of cooked dark leafy greens it belongs to, including collard greens, mustard greens, and turnip greens. The reason I single these out above all others for older adults comes down to bone health. And bone health after 60 is not a cosmetic or abstract concern. It is a survival matter. Bone density begins to decline meaningfully in your 50s, and the rate of that decline accelerates significantly after 60, particularly in women following the hormonal shifts of menopause, but substantially in men as well. Osteoporosis and its precursor, osteopenia, affect an enormous proportion of older adults, and the consequences are not merely statistical. 1 in every 2 women and 1 in every 4 men over 50 will sustain a fracture attributable to bone loss at some point in their remaining life. Hip fractures deserve special attention because they carry a genuinely sobering prognosis. A significant percentage of older adults who fracture a hip never fully regain their prior level of independence. And the mortality risk in a year following a hip fracture is a number that most people find startling when they first encounter it. Bok choy and cooked collard greens provide highly bioavailable calcium, meaning your body can absorb and put it to use with notable efficiency, sometimes exceeding the absorption rate of the calcium in dairy products. But what truly distinguishes these vegetables for bone health is their concentration of vitamin K. Vitamin K plays a critical and often underappreciated role in directing calcium to the places in your body where it belongs, primarily your bones and teeth, rather than allowing it to deposit in the walls of your arteries, a process called arterial calcification that contributes directly to cardiovascular disease. So these greens are simultaneously protecting your skeleton and protecting the interior of your blood vessels. And that dual action is a genuinely rare and powerful thing for a food to accomplish. These vegetables are also rich in folate, potassium, vitamin C, and antioxidant compounds that combat the chronic inflammatory process we discussed earlier. And because they are consumed cooked, the digestive difficulties associated with raw cruciferous vegetables are largely eliminated. Bok choy in particular is wonderfully versatile. A quick stir-fry in a small amount of sesame oil with garlic takes less than 5 minutes and produces something that is deeply satisfying and nourishing in every dimension. Collard greens, slow-cooked with olive oil, onion, and a splash of vegetable broth have a richness and depth of flavor that makes them feel indulgent while delivering extraordinary nutritional value. Make these cooked dark leafy greens a consistent feature of your weekly meals, and your body will register the difference. The third vegetable is specifically for your brain, and I say that with intention because cognitive health is, in my experience of working with older adults, the fear that sits deepest. People are often less afraid of a heart attack or even cancer than they are of losing their mental clarity, their memory, their sense of self. And while no single food can guarantee protection against dementia or Alzheimer's disease, the research on this particular vegetable and brain circulation is among the most compelling and consistently supported evidence in the entire field of nutritional neuroscience. That vegetable is the beet. Here is the mechanism. Beets are one of the most concentrated natural sources of dietary nitrates in any food category. When you eat beets, your body converts those dietary nitrates into nitric oxide, a molecule that causes the smooth muscle in your blood vessel walls to relax, allowing the vessels to widen and blood to flow through them more freely. This vasodilating effect improves circulation throughout your entire body, but its significance for older adults is most profound when it comes to the brain. One of the central driving forces behind age-related cognitive decline is reduced cerebral blood flow. The small vessels that feed your brain's tissue gradually lose their elasticity and responsiveness. Certain regions of the brain, particularly those associated with memory formation, executive reasoning, and processing speed, begin to receive less oxygen and fewer nutrients over time. This is not dramatic or sudden. It is the slow dimming of a system that is no longer receiving adequate fuel. Research conducted at a major university in the United States demonstrated through brain imaging technology that older adults who consumed beet juice before exercise showed dramatically increased blood flow to the prefrontal regions of the brain, the areas most directly tied to higher-order thinking, planning, decision-making, and working memory. The improvements were not subtle. They were visible on scans and clinically significant. Beets are, in a very real biological sense, feeding your brain more effectively. Beyond the nitric oxide pathway, beets contain a class of pigments called betalains, which are responsible for their deep crimson color and which carry potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. These compounds actively work against the chronic inflammatory process that accelerates aging throughout the body. Beets also contain a compound called betaine, which plays a significant role in managing levels of homocysteine in the blood. Elevated homocysteine is a recognized and independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease, stroke, and cognitive decline, and it becomes increasingly common with age, particularly in individuals whose B vitamin status is less than optimal. By helping to keep homocysteine in check, beets are delivering another layer of protection for both your heart and your mind simultaneously. Do not discard the beet greens if you buy fresh beets. The leafy tops are edible and extraordinarily nutritious, containing iron, calcium, vitamin K, and a concentrated array of antioxidants. Sauté them just as you would spinach or any other dark leafy green. They have a mild, slightly earthy flavor and pair beautifully with a little garlic and olive oil. In terms of preparation, roasting beets brings out a natural sweetness that makes them genuinely enjoyable. Slice them, toss them with a small amount of olive oil and a pinch of salt, and roast them in the oven until they are tender and slightly caramelized. They are wonderful in grain bowls, alongside cooked greens, blended into soups, or simply eaten on their own as a side dish. If you have a juicer, fresh beet juice is a concentrated and effective way to capture the nitrate benefits. If you're on blood-thinning medication, have a conversation with your healthcare provider about beet intake in the context of vitamin K. But for the vast majority of people, adding beets regularly to your diet is one of the most well-supported decisions you can make for your cognitive longevity. What I want to leave you with is this. Your body, even at 60, 70, or 80 years of age, retains a remarkable capacity to respond to what you give it. Your gut microbiome can begin shifting within weeks of dietary changes. Your blood pressure can respond to food within days. Your brain can start receiving better blood flow, starting with the very next meal you eat. The idea that it is too late to matter, that these choices only counted when you were younger, is simply not supported by the science. Every meal is a decision about the kind of biology you're either feeding or fighting. The 6 vegetables we covered today draw a clear line between what your older body handles well and what it does not, and between what actively serves the needs of aging tissue and what quietly works against them. Treating raw spinach, raw cruciferous vegetables, and raw nightshades with appropriate mindfulness, while making garlic, cooked dark leafy greens like bok choy and collards, and beets a consistent and intentional part of your weekly eating, is not a radical overhaul. It is a set of specific, actionable, biology-informed adjustments that can make a measurable difference in how you feel and function across the years ahead. Start with one change this week. Cook your spinach instead of eating it raw. Add crushed garlic to dinner 3 nights in a row. Pick up beets at the market and roast them this weekend. Small, consistent actions stack on top of each other over time and become the foundation of a body that is genuinely well supported rather than merely surviving. You're not too old for food to matter deeply. You are at exactly the age when it matters most.